Okay, Amanda Miller Littlejohn, so good to have you on the Comms Futurist podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Natalie, for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you. For those who saw the Reimagine series that I hosted this summer, Amanda was one of the panelists from the first event where we talked about burnout and urgency in communications. And you really brought such an interesting perspective, pulling from your book, The Rest Revolution. And I'm really excited to dive deeper into the insights you offered at that event. So yeah, just really excited to hear more about your expertise.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's do it.
Great. So, Amanda, I want to hear about your journey because I know you have a communications background, and I'm curious kind of how you got to this point, and then we can kind of unpack it from there. How does that sound?
That sounds good. I mean, I feel like I'm always telling this story and needing to give the background of how I even got to this place of writing this book, coaching people around comms and branding. Like, where did you come from, right? So basically, I started my career out as a journalist. I thought I was going to do long form nonfiction writing for like the New Yorker, the Atlantic, all the places. And I actually didn't major in journalism. I majored in English and history. And so the process of getting hired on as a staff writer at a newspaper was like a whole thing. I ended up taking this fellowship route. I did a fellowship at Medill School in Northwestern. And that was specifically to work on long form narrative nonfiction writing. And the whole idea was after that, I would get picked up by a newspaper. And it didn't quite happen seamlessly like that. Like I had to hustle and, I had friends who were like, I sent your clips to the editor over here and I got you a meeting. And so that was actually how I started my journey at a newspaper in DC, the Washington City paper. I was a staff writer and I thought I was on my way because actually a few amazing writers that I followed, like Ta-Nehisi Coates, he had actually started his career there. And I was like, wow, this is kind of the direction that I want to do. And Kate Boo was another writer who had kind of started there, gone on to the Washington Post, then I think the New York Times or the New Yorker. I'm not sure, but there was I felt like back then you could look at people's journeys and say, okay, I'm going to follow that path. That just doesn't work anymore. So long story short, I was not at that paper very long before they were purchased by another news organization, and that news organization started consolidating the various newsrooms that they own. So it was like, okay, we only need one art department. So they got rid of, our illustrator and all these, people on staff. And one by one, there were layoffs. And I kind of was like, okay, I haven't been here long. I don't have seniority. I'm probably going to be on the chopping block. And then I ended up getting pregnant. So that was the big plot twist.
Yeah, amazing.
Got pregnant. And while I was on my maternity leave, I remember I had a call with my editor and he was just like, so what are you thinking? Like, do you think you'll come back? And I had decided that I was not going to pursue trying to stay at the paper. Number one, because there were so many people who were there that loved that work. And I liked it well enough, but I wasn't diehard. And the timeline of going from staff writer to senior staff writer, editor, it was just too long. And the pay was just not good enough. And now I got this baby. So I was like, I'm going to bow out and step aside. And after that point, I decided that I was going to bet on myself and take the writing skills and pivot into a more entrepreneurial lane. And so I started doing contract copywriting, consulting, comms. Didn't know I was doing comms per se, but it evolved because people would hire me, like small PR firms would hire me and kind of put me on projects. And then I started to see what my skills were and I started to expand my skill set. And so I was like an entrepreneurial PR person pretty much from the start. So I started with just writing, then I built on that with more comms and marketing. And then when social media became a big thing for communications, I really focused my work on like social PR. Because a lot of comms people, I don't know if you were active during this was a while ago. I think you're much younger than me now. But back then a lot of comms people were afraid of social tools. And I
Okay.
remember doing workshops and webinars and basically trying to convince people like, hey, this is the future. It's essentially just like having a phone number now. This is a new way of reaching people and connecting with them. You can't just ignore it and say, well, I'm not going to get on there. Your customers are on there, your audience is on there. So you need to start learning how to use these tools. And so I talked a lot about digital social media for communications and eventually pivoted that to personal branding because I found that I loved helping individuals more than like big organizations. And that's kind of what brought me to where I am today. I mean, I still didn't get to the book, but I feel like I've been talking way too
No,
long.
this is great. We'll definitely get to the book. First of all, I didn't know that about Coates that he started at Washington City Paper. So that's
Yes.
super cool. Learn something
Isn't
there.
it?
Yes, amazing. And second of all, I love how you talked about pivoting to the entrepreneurial lane. That's the season of life that I've been in. So
Mm.
I think that's really, really cool. And I think there are so many skills that journalists and communications professionals have that really kind of naturally apply to entrepreneurship. So that's awesome. And then I definitely relate also to this kind of passion that you mentioned you have for supporting individuals and kind of the coaching, right? And I think in the Reimagine series, you mentioned how you help individuals do comms and PR for themselves, kind of,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's really, really beautiful. Yeah, so that's fantastic. And yeah, so then how did we write the rest revolution? How did that come about? Where does that fit into your journey?
So, working as a coach, with each stage, you refine and you get more specific with the problem you're solving and the audience you're serving. And so I think initially I said, I'm coaching individuals. I had actually had a lot of PR and comms people who came to me to help them market themselves because they saw that I was good at it. And so that was like one of my very first customer bases. But working with individuals who are super talented, super smart, had just a great skill set, great ideas, but were flying under the radar became my specialty. And I refined that to high achievers. And that was kind of how I positioned my messaging to target clients and to just talk about the challenges that I was supporting folks through. And I eventually moved from one on one coaching engagements to some group work because I had written a book, not this one, but my personal branding book, which is called Package Your Genius. I wrote that book. I actually had a toolkit called the Branding Box that was the precursor to Package Your Genius. So I had started putting my frameworks in on paper. Like I started extracting them and putting down the process because the thing I found was I'm having all of these sessions and I'm hearing a lot of the same challenges, a lot of the same questions. So, how can I create resources that people can take with them after the session or you maybe use in lieu of the session if working with someone individually is just not in the budget?
Hmm.
And so, once I got the tools down, then it was a no-brainer to say, well, I've got the curriculum, so to speak. Why not lead people through this process in a group? And so I started leading these cohorts for Package Your Genius Academy. And I would do like a fall academy and a spring academy, a fall academy and a spring academy. Then we hit the pandemic and I was gearing up for spring of 2021. And it was just a wild time. All of 2020 was crazy with the pandemic. I actually was pregnant again. It's like you know what? I just noticed like crazy things happen whenever I'm pregnant. It's like I'm pregnant and there's something crazy, something new is happening in my career and business. So yeah. And this is now 12 years after my last child. So this was a very intentional, I had pretty much said, because I have 2 teenagers, and I'd said I didn't want any more children until they got old. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you guys are leaving me soon." And I felt like I still had some mothering left, and I really, really wanted a daughter. So luckily, that's what we got. Back to 2021. 2020 had been obviously difficult with the pandemic. And then I've got this pregnancy that's, unprecedented because I'm not able, I'm going to the doctor's appointment. My husband can't come with me. Like all the things that you are used to during that process, it was different. My mother couldn't come to be, in the hospital with me. It was just, you could have one person. So I've got all that going on, gearing up for a new academy. We pitched the academy and I launch it and we go right into January. I've got a newborn. She was born in December. And I just kinda kept moving, and which was nuts, but I just kept going because that's how I'm wired. And I remember being in the academy classes, being exhausted, and then everyone was also talking about their exhaustion, and that was how the book kind of emerged because, number 1, I was hearing this common refrain among these high achievers who had come together to learn about how to build their brands. I was also experiencing my own exhaustion and burnout, and we're all having this pandemic moment. And I was also missing the journalism that used to bring me so much joy that I had stepped away from because it wasn't feasible to just keep pursuing that. And so started pitching freelance articles around the topic. And once I got a few under my belt, I realized that I had so much more to say than what was captured in those like 900-word pieces. And I think I manifested it. I was like, I am going to write a book.
Love that.
And that is all she wrote,
I love
really.
that. I love that. Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I think it's interesting that there is this connection between high achievers and comms professionals. And what I mean by that is, I think so many comms professionals are high achievers, are people pleasers, perfectionists, all of these things, and so I'm just really glad that we're having this conversation because I just think it's so relevant. And all my clients that I talk to, to your point, it's kind of hearing the same stories, right? It's people struggling to talk about their wins, to talk about their impact, to celebrate themselves, to really put themselves out there, come out kind of from behind the curtain
Yeah.
and build their online presence. I mean, I could go on and on. And so I think it's really a kind of a great group of people to be focused on. And yeah, so I want to understand kind of more like what the rest revolution is and what the premise of the book is, and then we can unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so the Rust Revolution is, in a way, it is my way of naming this age that we're in. So it's not the Rust Revolution like, let's have a revolution. In a way, it is that, but in another way, it's kind of like the Industrial Revolution,
Mhm.
right? The technological revolution. I really do believe that we are at a point as a society where more people are waking up to how unsustainable our current pace of working is. We're waking up to the costs of overwork, what we are backburnering, and once we pick it back up, is it still there? The things that can't be replaced or can't be repaired when they are damaged by overwork. So, our health, our relationships, our key relationships. And so, that was a big aha moment that I had during the pandemic. And it was something that I was working through and talking through with some of the people who were in the academy. And as I started doing reporting, to hear other people's experiences, I started to hear these themes about, what would trigger a burnout breaking point? What were some of the steps leading up to you experiencing burnout? What were same thing as like if we were to look at like what are all the challenges of someone who is not putting themselves out there? So kind of how I looked at all of the sessions that I had had as a personal branding coach, and then I created this toolkit. I kinda did that with the book. It was like, I'm hearing I've heard that before, I've heard that before, I've heard that before from someone else. And so I essentially captured, a burnout cycle, which was overworking on autopilot, back burnering what matters, repeatedly skipping winter, which is a concept that I explain in the book around, having these seasons of perpetual blooming, expecting ourselves to always be climbing and reaching the next level, the next step, the next promotion, the next award, but failing to take that necessary regenerative period to rest, reflect, and make decisions about what we'll take with us or leave behind for the next spring planting season. And so, that's kind of the cycle. And once you go through all of those, you hit a burnout breaking point. And that was what I started tracking through the conversations that I was having with people. And so the book is kind of broken down into three parts. I talk about this history of attitudes towards work and overworking since the Industrial Revolution. I share interviews that I conducted that really map that burnout cycle that I just mentioned. The middle of the book, in the longest chapter, I share my executive coaching philosophy, which is called purpose scaping. And that is based on the four seasons. So, that concept of repeatedly skipping winter, I go more into what each season means and requires for a person. And so, if you can get in alignment with the season that you're in for whatever aspect of your life that you are trying to make changes for, right? So, like, what I've found as a coach is, we often repeatedly skip winter or we're expecting ourselves to be in this perpetual autumn harvest. Depending on what it is and how long you've been doing it or how new it is, this might be spring planting where you need to just learn, keep your head down, be gentle with yourself, give yourself grace. Or maybe it is, the fall/winter, like you're heading into winter and it's time to look at what has perhaps expired for you and what you need to leave behind and turn the page on. But I find that if we are always looking at ourselves through the lens of one season, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to meet the needs of the current season. And I think when people can wrap their minds around that, it's like a huge exhale. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not behind, or I'm not off track, or the fact that I'm bored means it's time for me to plant something new. And that's normal. That's
Mhm.
natural. That is like expected. I've been doing this for a really long time. It's time to turn the page. It doesn't mean I'm a failure, it doesn't mean that I'm a quitter. It simply means it's time to till the soil and kick up something new and fresh because I have evolved to my next level. And now that I'm moving into spring, again, I'm going to be a beginner and it's okay to not know everything even though I'm an expert in this one area, because
Mhm.
now I am reinventing, and it's fine that people don't know my name or they don't know me for this thing or that I don't know all the answers. Now is my time to learn and to be excited about what this new season has for me. And so that's purposescaping in the middle. And then the end of the book is focused on the 5 realignments. So one of the premises of the book is that burnout is caused by a series of misalignments. So when you think about a vehicle that perhaps has, you know, its wheels are misaligned, you can drive it. It's a little shaky, but
Mhm.
you
Right.
can get to where you're going, right? And if you think of yourself in that same way, you can get things done, but because you are not in alignment, you are expending unnecessary energy just to do the basics. And so if we can bring you back into alignment, we can stop wasting energy and leaking energy, which is one of the ways that we find ourselves in burnout. And so 5 realignments that I cover in the book are restoring your connection with yourself, becoming a student of yourself again, understanding your needs, and really just getting back in touch with what you need, what you want, and evaluating whether what you're doing matches what you actually
Mhm.
want and who you are. Because again, overworking on autopilot. We're living on autopilot. So oftentimes we set a goal at 18 and we don't even revisit it. We never revisit it. We're just going, going, going. So restoring the connection with yourself, realigning and recalibrating your ambition. So is the thing that I'm going after, chasing, striving for still the thing that I want? Realigning your time. Am I spending my time in a way that is true to who I am and my purpose and what I want and the goals that I have? Or am I just on autopilot? So it's just all the alignments are about coming off of autopilot and really sinking into who you are. That fourth alignment is restoring your space. And when I say space, I'm talking about like the space around you, your nervous system. So diving into stillness practices and helping yourself get recalibrated from a nervous system perspective. And the last alignment is connections, because we all need community support to do big things. And that's one of the biggest things that I found with my clients that is burning them out. They don't have support. They're trying to do everything themselves. They're afraid to ask for help, or maybe they think asking for help puts them in a position to show that they're not as good as they
Right,
want to
shows
be perceived
weakness.
as. Yeah, it shows weakness or incompetence. And that is that is a burnout behavior. And so I think that's a good synopsis of the book. I
It's
went through all 14 chapters.
I would say I think that's brilliant. I'm curious kind of how long these seasons last from your perspective, and I'm sure it varies from person to
Yeah.
person, but what
It
what
not
does that
just
look like?
varies it not just varies from person to person, it varies from like thing to thing. And so here's the thing about purposecaping. It's a lens, and it's not, I'm not saying that every season maps to like 3 months of the year.
Mm.
A cycle, a purposecaping cycle could be a month. You could spend a week planning, a week, growing, because it's the actions, I guess, or be spring planting, summer growth, fall harvest, and winter rest and decision making. So you could map that to a business process, launch it. You could look at your series you just did, right? And you could look at whenever you came up with an idea. That's your spring. And when you were like, okay, I'm going to reach out to Amanda and these other awesome people and invite them and see if they want to do this. That's the spring, right? And then you're promoting it. You're getting traction. You're getting people registered. That's the growth, the summer growth. And then you do it, right? It's
Yep.
like you harvested this thing. We had a conversation. Oh, wow. And then after that, you reflect on it. How did it go? What did I think? How many people came? How are my speakers? Was the conversation solid? How would I do this if I did it again? Did I like it? Do I want to do it again? You know what I mean? All of
Yep.
that. So that's a
Yeah.
cycle, a purposecaping cycle that you can map to an event. But when I think about parenting, for example, sure, I could see a shorter cycle like that within an issue of my relationship with my children, but I can also kind of pull back and say, wow, I could really see where the spring season and their maturity around, becoming a team player and a family member, in this family. Like I remember when I first started sharing things and molding them and coaching them on this, and then I see them start to use this new skill set, and like now I have a recent high school graduate who's going to college, right? And so it's like, oh my God, we
Yeah.
harvested you.
Yeah. Yes.
Like we
Well,
got there.
I'm so curious how you approach this as a parent because obviously, to your point, we live in this urgency culture and kind of this hustle culture, right? And as far as I can tell, that is just continuing up and to the right, so to speak, as far as the trajectory of it, and not
What
slowing
do you
down
mean?
any times. Well, what I mean is that I don't think that that urgency culture and that fast pace, I don't think it's slowing down anytime soon, right? I
Yeah.
think it's kind of snowballing. And so I'm curious as a parent how you talk about that with your family around kind of how to prepare them for professional life, maybe given kind of the lessons from your book, because I think that that is really a gift that you can give them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. They are, as I write in the book, they are some of my greatest teachers, and I love young people because they don't overthink when it comes to like philosophical questions. They look at the situation, they tell you what they see. And so sometimes they mirror back to me the very lessons that I've shared with them through, and that I've shared in the book. And so I think it's not a Amanda is the all-knowing and I'm going to share my way. Like they teach me and then I mirror back to them and they mirror back to me. And so it's a dance, it's a conversation and it's ongoing. But I think that, as I share in the book, they were witnesses to my pandemic burnout and their perspective really helped me to see how insane was
Mm.
behaving. I don't think I would have been able to see it so clearly had they not mirrored back to me like, "Ma, you were not good. Like,
Mhm.
did you see yourself?" And so, we have really good conversations. It's funny, I have been working with them this summer because I've had them they tried to get jobs in the world, like, retail jobs. They
Mhm.
just couldn't get them. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll put an application together and you
Mhm.
can come and learn and work for me. Oh, cool. It's been interesting because they have some entrepreneurial endeavors as well. So one is like a cookie business that my high school senior has. And so I explain, the purpose giving concept, yes, it can be applied to like relationships, your health, your career, blah, blah, blah. But it also has a very specific application to PR and personal branding, right?
Okay.
So
Sure.
when you think about spring for a personal brand or a business, that spring planning, that's establishing the new thing that we're going to offer the world, right? So it's like, I gotta name it. I gotta put some language around it. What does it look like? Like, I have to establish this thing before I tell people about it. Like, I need a name. I need something so that when I start talking about it, I have a message. So that's the spring, establishing whatever it is. That could be creating a product. That could be a platform, right? So like if you're purposecaping around your brand and you've decided I want to reinvent myself around this new way of showing up, it could be I'm launching a podcast, I'm writing a book. So the planting is the actual making the book a book,
Yep.
making the podcast
Yep.
an actual thing, giving it a name, establishing a few episodes. Summer growth is all about visibility. And this is something I had to learn personally because I love creating. I love making new things, creating new things. And then I'll just like walk away. And I'm like, huh? Why didn't it
Mhm.
go the way I thought it was going to go? And it's like, well, you
Yep.
didn't push it. You didn't tell people about it. You didn't make it visible. And then obviously, fall is like whatever the harvest is for you. It could be selling the thing, it could be getting paid sponsors, it could be getting awards, or if we're in a job situation, getting the promotion, getting the next level thing, whether it's the
Mhm.
money in hand or the recognition. And then winter is, okay, we went through a whole cycle, let's reflect. And so I had to teach my high school senior who has the cookie business. I was like, okay, first things first, we got these cookies, you're selling them to like friends at school. It was just very organic. I was like, well, what if we put a website up where people could order the cookies? Maybe, people could order them for their workplaces, their offices, office parties. Like, let's expand beyond just like friends in the hallway at school. Like,
Right,
let's
like
start moving.
16-year-olds.
Let's
Yeah.
move dozens versus one cookie at a time. And so he sets up this website using Square because that was, I think, a point of sale we already had access to. And it was really easy. Set it up, put the pictures, da da da. And I mean, it was looked great. And then the next day, it was like, "Okay, this website is I don't have any orders." And I was like, "Ah, you've planted, but you have not there has been no summer growth. There has been no
Huh?
visibility. Now you gotta tell people that this website exists. You gotta
Gotta drive it.
you gotta share it." Yeah, and so, um, I was like, "Why don't you send an email to your past customers?" He only had, like, 5 people that he could send it to who had
Mhm.
bought something, bought, like, a dozen cookies in the past to say, "Hey, I have a website now. I'm live, and I'm taking orders online. Please check me out, share with your friends." And I think by the end of the week, he had like 6 dozen orders for a dozen cookies or something like that. And so that was like a whole he saw like the whole like,
Yes.
okay, it's not enough to just make the thing. You gotta tell people about the thing. You gotta push it. You gotta create the whole circle and then you evaluate. And right after that week, we decided, okay, well, what's something that we could do next week to bring people to the site? So it's like, well, instead of just sending an email, why don't we post about it on social? Why don't we like what's the visibility mechanism? And so that's just like a quick example of purpose gaming. But I will also say, just from a relational perspective, I'm really excited about my new college graduate because I mean high school graduate going to college because essentially we're starting a spring seat like
Yeah. Yep.
yes graduated, we harvested, and now we spent the summer doing all this reflection. But college is it's like it's a new endeavor, it's a new arena. We're going to both be beginners. And so I'm excited about this spring season and what is going to grow from this new opportunity to see how everything that we've done up to this point will show up in this new environment.
Mm.
So I think my point with purposescaping is if you stop and you examine, there are cycles to be observed all around us. And so for me, going back to this example of now we're going to college, if I'm coming at freshman year of college like we are in summer or we're in fall, and I'm expecting this child to know how things work, to get it right, to be able to navigate in a new city, and I'm getting frustrated because you know what I mean? So it helps you level set your response, your expectation, your approach because it's like, no, this is spring. Logan does not know what's going on. So this is going
Mm.
to be a time of tenderness, of being patient and gentle, of explaining things, of repeating yourself, of checking in, because we got to make sure we can get those roots strong so that, sophomore year, we won't have as many hiccups and challenges. But I am moving into this literal fall season of first semester, but spring season of parenting journey, this new parenting
Mhm.
journey of a college freshman with the spirit of spring, right? The
Mm.
spirit of gentleness. Like when a plan is new, you have to be so gentle
Mhm.
because it is not established yet. So it's like, okay, Logan doesn't know how this works. So you're going to
Mhm.
have to bring your grace and your patience and, use your words kindly. There are going to be things that are forgotten. There are things that are going to fall through the cracks. That is to be expected when someone is literally in a new life phase, in a whole new city, navigate like a whole new school, new friends, new everything. So
Yes.
just bring your grace with you. We'll get through
Absolutely.
it. Expect the hiccups because it's
Yeah.
spring. And
Yeah.
expect to have to nurture in a very particular way. Like, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
That's what I'm carrying.
I love those examples that you shared because so much of communications work is around the relationship building and I think an important part of our role is having empathy and compassion and kind of meeting people where they are with our messaging, right? And
Yes.
so I really love that example you gave and appreciate you sharing that. And I'm also thinking about this purposescaping in terms of a communications plan, right? And so it's this idea that, okay, you build the plan, right? And then you get buy-in from people, right? And get people to kind of opt into the plan. Then you execute and measure along the way. And then at the end, kind of, okay, we look at the data, we see how it performed and we reflect,
Mhm.
and then we move on to
Yep.
the next one. And so that comes to mind, and also the fact that you can have all of these kind of coinciding purpose scapes
Yep,
happening at the same time and
yep.
be in different seasons, right?
Yes.
And I think that is really cool, and so anyway, those are a couple of thoughts. I'll also say that, something I've realized with solopreneurship is how important it is to manage my energy. It's like
Yeah.
if my energy is low for an extended period of time, that's a problem because I
Mhm.
am I am the one who built the ship, who steers the ship, who I do all the things, right?
Yeah.
And so I haven't I've been a solo comms team multiple times, and so I think that work has kind of prepared me well for this. But I guess all of that to say, there really is this aspect of giving yourself grace, to your point, and kind of recognizing that we have to protect our own energy as high achievers in order to be able to do the work at all, let alone well, right?
Yes, yes. And I think that really dovetails neatly into one of the big concepts of the book, which talks about machine mindset and how one of the big changes that I'm seeing is we are shifting from seeing ourselves and expecting outputs from ourselves as though we are machines and reclaiming our humanity and understanding what we need as human beings. And one of those big things is rest, right? The very things that drain your energy and keep you from feeling your best, that would not occur with the machine. And so even just recognizing that we need we need certain things, and that's the chapter on restoring your relationship with yourself, like really getting clear on what you need to be your best. It's okay, and it's especially okay if what you need is different from what someone else needs, but you are, in charge of you, and you are responsible for making sure you're creating the best environment for you to thrive. And so that's one of the messages that I'm very hopeful and excited and encouraged to see seems to really be circulating pretty widely. Like people are beginning to understand when our health takes a hit and what we need to perform at our best level. And one of those biggest needs is just time to rest and recharge.
And how important it is for leaders to model that for teams, right? And I think especially on a comms team where I was just talking to Louise Thompson, who coaches senior comms professionals, and she was talking about how there there is this kind of dopamine hit that we get when we are rushing and responding to crises and all of these things, and how important it is for leaders to kind of be able to appropriately lead their teams through that, but also then being able to take a step back and look at the big picture and do the planning and connecting our work to business outcomes, right? And
Yeah.
not just kind of reacting, but being more proactive. So I think that's really interesting. The other thing I'll say is, I was just talking to Jacques Fool, who I had on the podcast recently, and he trains comms and public affairs teams in how to use AI, right? And how to upskill in AI. And one of the things we talked about is how comms professionals who already have so much on our plates, right? We are a bit at risk of people thinking, oh, okay, well, we have AI at our fingertips now, here's even more work to do, right? And the way that I think he and I were talking about it, and the way we like to think about it is, how can it free us up to do more of the work that we really love, and that gives us
Yeah.
energy and that fills us up? And I think that's really interesting, kind of related to this idea of kind of that we operate as machines, like you were talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I remembered when we had our panel. I was reminiscing on the smartphone and how I remember when phones became ubiquitous. I got my first iPhone. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to let me do everything and get so much more done. And I'm never going to have to turn
Yep.
off. I can check my email and take a call and dictate a text and all of this craziness instead of, you know, saying, I am freeing up more time for the good things or for rest. I just crammed more stuff. And I think That's always a risk when we have some new tool that seemingly makes productivity easier to come by. But I hope that, we do remember that it's not about simply doing more or checking more items off the to do list to be more productive, but to also be able to make room, like you said, for the things that are energizing to us, the things that are tied to our purpose, the things that, we were put here for.
Mm.
So that's what excites me about I need to really like I go back and forth with it because, I also have like my whole green thumb. I'm like, "My environment
Yep, that's a biggie. It's a complicated,
is
topic,
so
no question.
complicated."
Yep.
But it's also one of those conversations you can't ignore. You can't just say, "Well, I'm not going to engage." Like it's kind of like the social media conversation. Like it's here, you must engage because you don't want to become obsolete, but there are and maybe there were people back when social media became a big thing who were saying this is going to lead to the downfall of our social connection. It's going to create loneliness and socially awkward people, like
Yeah,
they would have
yeah.
been right. Too much comparison and depression, they would have been right.
Yep, 100%. I'm curious, Amanda, what the response to the book has been and what people have found valuable about it and kind of just the feedback you've gotten from the book.
I mean, it's been largely positive. People really are. I find it funny when people pick the book up and they get it because they're like, okay, I'll get the book. But then it takes them a while to like sit down and crack it open. And then when they do, they're like, oh my God, they feel very seen. I
Mm,
think high achievers especially feel very seen or someone they know they're reading the stories, either my story or the stories of the different people that I interviewed. They're seeing themselves very clearly, and I think it's a moment of just realizing that number 1, they're not alone, and number 2, the way they are relating to work is has been crafted, has been shaped. Like how we negotiate our boundaries with work, negotiate our self-worth in relation to work and achievement. That has all been created by just the landscape, the soup, as it were, that we're all kind of swimming in, steeping in. And it's not so much an individual situation so much as it is society, our family systems, our history. So I think people are to really recognize how much history and our socialization has shaped how it shapes how you, Natalie, get up at 4 a.m. and do you know what I mean? Like
mhm.
your personal habits, how much of that is just shaped by the time that you're living in, the expectations, the idea of what success means or what it means to be a hard worker. Like even that idea, I think there's probably a time when maybe hard work wasn't this thing that people just put on a pedestal.
Yeah.
I feel like we're entering a time now where people are starting to put on the pedestal this concept of restoration because we are so depleted. We're depleted. And so I think in the past, you remember grind culture, girl boss, sleep when I die, 10 times, Grant Cardone, 10 times this, 10 times
Yep.
that. Like
Yep.
these are all ideas that were quite heavily circulated and accepted. And now we're pushing back against them. So I think that's one of the conversations that comes up a lot when people encounter the book. The stories, the interviews make them feel seen. They have aha moments, especially around like the burnout breaking point when they see like, "Oh, okay, I can relate to that because typically burnout breaking points involve like a health challenge, health scare, or unprocessed like the lack of time and space to process a major grief, and
Mm,
then that can just send you over the edge too. And so people are like they start
yeah.
putting the pieces together and seeing their experiences play out. But also, getting ideas and strategies for how to get back into alignment and reclaim their rest, I think is also something that people say. I've had a lot of coaches to read the book and say, "Oh, I'm sharing this with all of my clients, like every high achiever should read this." And so that's been really nice to see that it's resonating and that people are feeling hopeful about what they can do to combat like our culture of burnout.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think there's so much that communications people can pull from this conversation and this concept of purpose scaping and all of that. And I think it's a really useful tool for people to have in their pockets. So really grateful for you to you for the conversation. I'm curious how people can find you and work with you and connect. What's the best way?
Oh, I'm all over the internet. I love LinkedIn, so I'm always active there pretty much every day. So if you find me on LinkedIn, friend me and let me know that you heard this episode. You can also visit my website, amandamillerlittlejohn.com, theRestRevolutionBook.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm all over social media, but I think LinkedIn is the best way to get a conversation going. But you can check out my websites, check out the book site to learn more about me and who I am and, what I'm up to.
Yeah, you're walking the walk in terms of making yourself visible, so that's great. Yeah.
Trying.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Well, so good to have you on the podcast and really, really appreciate you sharing your insights, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. This was awesome.